Okay, Nick and Andy, let's chat about the US men's national team now. Copa America is off and running, got off to a great start against Bolivia with that Christian Pulisic banger, Balogun on target as well. Nick, we've kind of seen everyone in Copa America now, and I feel like no one for the US to really be that worried about, probably Argentina aside. So how far do you think this US team can go? Because it seems like people now, optimism levels, still cautious, but they're rising a little bit.
Yeah, mine has for sure, especially because I think that Bolivia game could have been a 5-goal game, a 6-goal game. I mean, Ricardo Pepe could have had a hat trick in the second half. It was one of those things. And you're right. I mean, Argentina scare me, Colombia scare me because of what they did to the US just recently. And Brazil is always going to be an issue. And the fact that you could run into those teams, or you could run into Brazil right away, that scares me as well. But all that said, this group stage is winding up to be something that feels good for the US, and you just wouldn't be surprised to see them come out of this feeling as good as they've ever felt and feeling like they're playing with house money. And that's a good feeling for some of us who questioned what they've been doing for a couple of years.
It's very true, Andy. And I think in your hometown of Kansas City is where they play Uruguay in the final group stage game. And that's a great litmus test, right? Because Uruguay have looked excellent. We were always kind of earmarking that as the game where we'd find out just how good the US are and, what confidence they could take from a positive result in that game into the knockout rounds. What's your thoughts on where we're at right now with the US in this tournament?
Yeah, little step by step, there's progression and improvement and growth, I think is probably the right word for this team, because now this is the first time they've gone into a major tournament, this group and this coach, and said, all right, we should be doing this. It's not, well, how far can we get? The expectation is we'd like to see a semifinal. And I think that's kind of widespread, just the opinion that everybody has held. Like, this is the time that they should be achieving something as a group. And so, obviously the performance against Bolivia was about as good as we've seen from a U.S. team at a major tournament. So we'll say World Cup and Copa America appearances, because the Gold Cup is obviously just a slightly lower level of competition, and the expectation is to not just win that competition, but I think dominate it. And so to see them go in, even against the lowest ranked South American team, Nick is right, could have been 5 or 6 goals in that game. It looked comfortable. It looked confident. They looked assured of everything that they were doing and everything they did in that game. And that's just, that was a bit of that was noticeable to me, because it's kind of out of the norm for this team in tournaments. And so I'm very optimistic, and not just based on beating Bolivia, but it's everything we've talked about for years now, kind of culminating in this moment and coming together. Fingers crossed here. Everybody healthy at the moment, everybody performing well, everybody looking happy in the group. Like, vibes are good around the group right now. And that, maybe wasn't quite the case about 18 or 24 months ago, was it?
It wasn't. And Nick, we talked before this tournament started about what would be a successful Copa America for the US. And we said, semi-final would be a success, but quarterfinals would be okay, right? Depending on Brazil, Colombia, who you come up against. But that would be the next step. And it feels like I'm having a better time with saying they really have to make the semi-final now. I think the quarterfinals even would be, if they were knocked out against one of those giants, it happens. But for this development of this team, for them to take that next step, they really have to beat one of those big boys in the quarterfinals to call this a success and have an achievement unlocked, if you will, for their development. So I'm leaning more towards that could happen. Do you still feel like, is there a possibility that the US could actually win this whole thing on home soil? Because Neymar has come out and said the US are looking good. I think they're like one of the few best teams in this tournament. Obviously, Brazil aren't looking great. Argentina are looking solid. Uruguay. I mean, it seems like it's very doable for the US to get far, but they have to get through that quarterfinal hurdle first, right? Before we can probably talk about winning a trophy and what a great achievement that would be.
Right. There's some boxes that they can check off in the near term, right? It beat Uruguay on home soil in the group stage. You'll feel completely different about the tournament, but you can also get crushed by them, so to speak. They looked quite good against Panama and still have a win in the next round. Like, one of those two games kind of has to happen. If they were to win the group which by the way could still wind up with Brazil, I guess. You're walking away from that game thinking, all right, we've achieved something. We have beaten a big team that could win the tournament in a big game, but they could also lose both of those games. And we're back there saying, well, who is their backline at a World Cup? Or can this backline come together? And I think they're ultimately the Uruguay game will be it'll be a pivot point and a litmus test for the coach too, because how are you going to take that game? How are you going to look in that game? And how organized are you going to be in executing a plan with a group on the line?
Yeah, and against the Marcelo Bielsa team. So
yeah, I have those same questions defensively about the team, projecting forward, especially the fact that Tim Ream, we all love Tim Ream here, but Tim Ream's still doing it. And at some point, that's no longer a viable option for this team. And so that needs to be sorted out. But I am incredibly encouraged by what I saw going forward. How long have we called for? Can we just have Gio Reyna in the center of midfield alongside Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie? It finally happened. It looked really, really good. He makes them so much more dangerous on the counter. It's not even in possession, but it's on the counter because how quickly he plays. He gets the ball and he immediately looks upfield. He immediately dribbles upfield. He immediately passes forward. It's constantly putting pressure. And then Balogun scoring the goal the way that he did. That, to me, in the moment, there was no danger there. There was no chance there. And he made a little something out of nothing at center forward for the U.S. men's national team. Just think about that. I don't know if that's ever happened before. A center forward kind of just creates a chance for himself, picks it out, and puts it right there. That's the level of goal scorer that we have yearned for a long, long time. And obviously, it's just one moment. It's against Bolivia, the 84th ranked team in the world, yada, yada, yada. Put all that aside, we saw growth and we saw improvement from the team in that game. And to me, again, I'll keep coming back to that. That's the most encouraging thing.
Joe, you want to hear something audacious from me? And he's far away from being there. But there are times I watch Gio Reyna and I see Eden Hazard. I mean, it has to come together. It has to come together consistently. But the impetus to move forward, the always want to attack, and also the willingness to win the ball back where a player of his position doesn't necessarily want to from time to time on the big stage. I'm not telling you he's anywhere near there. Those are some serious heights, but there's something there that reminds me. Yeah.
Who could do himself a bigger favor than with a really good summer than Gio right now, where who knows what his club situation is? It could look incredibly different 2 or 3 weeks from now than it does right now or coming into the tournament.
Yeah, especially with a change of manager at Dortmund and the American Phil Foden. Let's see how he gets on. If we go about the favourites then, Nick, obviously we talked about Argentina, Uruguay, obviously Brazil is up there. Colombia have looked good. Is that probably from that 4 teams I mentioned there that you think that's where the winner's going to be for this tournament?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to you, Joe. No, I mean, I really do think that that's right now. I've just watched Argentina just kind of hang out, not have to be at its best. Like the Canada game, there was a lot of talk about, wow, Jesse Marsch has them organized and they've got a plan and whatever. But it also looked like Argentina knew they were going to win the entire game and we're just trying things and kind of having fun. If anyone's ever been like up to the playground to play a sport with the older kids and you just know that the minute you do something good, they're going to do 4 things good. That's what Argentina looks like to me. So I'm leaning on them right now.
Andy, who are you going with? Because I also want to give a special shout out to Venezuela when they're open 2 group stage games. Incredible. Well done to them. But anybody really stand out? Any different teams? Or do you think it's those teams we mentioned that could win?
Venezuela, to me, aside from the teams you would expect at Copa America, have been the most impressive and the most interesting as well. It's not refined. It's not sharp. It's quick. It's aggressive. It's fierce. I mean, that game against Mexico was one of the chippiest games that I've seen in a long time. But it never really, after the whistle maybe, but it never stepped over the line. It was just really intense competition. And when you come into a tournament like this, that if you can compete, you have a chance. And Venezuela compete as much and as hard as anybody, and they will, assuming that they match up with Argentina in the semifinals. I think Venezuela are there. They will give Argentina a real challenge. They probably won't beat them, but they will make them work for it. They might affect them a little bit going on into a potential final as well, just from a fatigue perspective. So Venezuela, to me, have been a real joy at this tournament, and their fans have really shown up and added something as well.
Yeah, it's been a really real joy to chat with this tournament about you two, and I think we're going to enjoy watching what we see from the US as they progress throughout this tournament. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest from Copa America as the US men's national team are building some positive momentum. Let's see how they get on as they enter some pivotal games coming up.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.